Hello, all. I'm Kelly Ammerman with Wild Goose Chase, back again with another episode in our series on managing nuisance birds from a biological perspective. Today's topic concerns managing summer gull nesting. This may seem out of season right now, but there are necessary steps that need to be taken now to prepare for later in the year. Let's get started. In this episode, we'll start by learning more about how gulls nest and what sorts of nuisances they can cause when they do. Then we'll go over the protections afforded to gull species and the permits needed to manage their nesting. We'll also touch on what management options are available without a permit, before finally we'll discuss how Wild Goose Chase assists with the permitting process, managing gull nesting, and reporting at the end of the season. To begin, there are two main gull species that Wild Goose Chase manages: the ring-billed gull and herring gull. Both gull species are present in the Midwest and congregate in areas near large bodies of water, like the Great Lakes. Both species are migratory, meaning that most populations leave the Midwest in the fall and winter for warmer areas further south. When they return in the spring, they form large colonies that then begin nesting in the early summer. Nesting colonies form on large, flat expanses like beaches, fields, and roofs. Therein lies the largest nuisance issue for these two species. Gull nesting is a loud, messy affair. Ring-billed gulls form large nesting colonies, often hundreds or even thousands strong. These colonies are raucous, and the combination of gathered nesting material and accumulated feces creates issues for the properties they nest on. Herring gull nests may be a bit more isolated than the tightly packed ring-billed colonies, but herring gulls tend to be more aggressive when defending their nests and can pack a bigger hit with their larger bodies. When these two species formed mixed nesting colonies, you unfortunately get the worst of both worlds. Both gull species are likely to yell at, dive bomb, poop on, and attack anyone that gets too close to the colony. For colonies placed on the roofs of large buildings, this can even include people walking around at ground level. Gulls pose a nuisance or even a hazard when they are nesting, but this issue is by no means limited to one summer season. These loud, messy, and aggressive gulls will return to the same location year after year to nest, and colonies will only grow as young hatched at that location in previous years grow up and join in on the nesting. Without proper, timely management of the nesting colony, this nuisance will only grow and get worse over time. To complicate this matter, both gull species are protected by federal and/or state law. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act is a federal law that provides protection to all native bird species, including gulls and other nuisance species. This law prohibits the take, possession, transport, capture, handling, or killing of any native bird species. Because of this federal protection, permits must be obtained before management of nesting colonies can take place. A migratory bird depredation permit is obtained from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service after applying and including an additional form provided by the USDA's Wildlife Services. Depending on the state, additional state permitting may also be required once the federal permit is received. Going through the necessary steps for each separate agency can be time-consuming and confusing, especially for business owners or property managers that have no experience navigating these various bureaucracies. The federal permit application is very detailed and requires extensive knowledge of the nuisance issue, the nuisance species, the number of birds, and several other factors. Not only that, but the permit can take weeks or months to receive depending on federal backlogs, meaning that applications need to be submitted to the agency well before the nesting colony has become a nuisance. Without a federal permit in place, there is very little management that can be done once gulls begin nesting. Before the gulls begin nesting, harassment is permissible as long as the birds are not harmed. Properties may be able to deter nesting on their property before it begins if they act in a timely manner and with the appropriate tools. If appropriate harassment is regularly performed before nesting can begin, it may be sufficient to convince the birds to find a better, safer place to raise their young. For ground-based nesting colonies, services like Wild Goose Chase's Canine Harassment Service utilize our highly trained canine staff and other tools to harmlessly move birds from the area. The presence of a potential predator, like our border collies, scares the birds into flight and forces them to find a different, safer place to spend their time. If done persistently and consistently, gulls may be deterred from nesting at that location, as the regular presence of this predator means the area is no longer viewed as a safe place for their young. For rooftop nesting colonies, an automated laser provides the same service through a different mechanism. The AVIX Mark II autonomic laser system shines a bright green laser beam across the coverage area that the birds find threatening and want to get away from. The laser does not harm the birds, but instead uses their startled flight response to move the birds as the laser light travels in programmed patterns. Since the laser system can operate 24 hours a day and is designed to work in outdoor conditions, gulls in the area will be continuously, harmlessly harassed, causing the gulls to find a better location where they can settle down. Sometimes, though, these tools alone are not enough to convince the gulls to abandon their nesting location, especially if the colony has been there for generations. Once nesting begins, harassment techniques become markedly less effective, as very little can convince the parents to abandon their eggs or young. Instead, nest management is needed. By systematically removing the eggs from the nesting colony, the gulls will experience a complete nesting failure for that year. Once the colony has failed to hatch any eggs for the season and don't have any young to raise, the colony will move on and disperse the breeding colony sooner than they would without nest management. When the gulls return the following year, the combination of harassment services and the memory of the failed nesting season makes it much more likely that the colony will choose a different nesting location for that year. Given the importance of nest management in reducing the nuisance of nesting gulls, there is a lot riding on obtaining a federal permit in a timely manner. That's why it's so important that the application is done right the first time. That's where Wild Goose Chase comes in. We have been in the business of managing birds for nearly 30 years and have the experience and expertise necessary to navigate and help guide our clients through the red tape. Right now, our team is assisting all of our clients dealing with nesting gull issues and obtaining their necessary permits. Applications sent in now will have enough time to be approved before the work needs to begin this summer. Once the permit is approved and you notice the colony has returned to your property, then the real work begins. Our team of trained personnel are equipped with the tools they need to make sure the nesting colony is unsuccessful at that location that year. This means our team makes repeated visits throughout the nesting season to ensure no nests are missed. Once the season is complete and nesting has concluded, Wild Goose Chase also assists by fulfilling the necessary reporting requirement associated with the federal permit. Start to finish, Wild Goose Chase is there for you for every step to make sure managing your nesting gull colony is as easy as possible. But it all begins with you. Waiting to take action on your nuisance gull issues may mean delaying our ability to assist. That's why it's so important to reach out to Wild Goose Chase now before it becomes too late. So what did we discuss today? We first learned about nesting gull colonies and the nuisance issues they can cause. We then discussed the federal protections granted to gull species and what that means for their management. We talked about the necessary permitting process and how it can be complicated and time-consuming. We also touched on the management options available without a permit. And finally, we discussed how Wild Goose Chase is there for our clients throughout the entire permitting and management process. I hope you have enjoyed this episode and learned why we at Wild Goose Chase are a leading expert in solving your nuisance bird issues. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please send us an email or check out our website at wildgoosechasers.com. Stay tuned for the next episode when we will discuss even more of your nuisance bird issues. See you next time!